Can you see that slide about taxing the monopoly?
Yes, we can see.
Okay, good. So last time we had talked about how the government could uh, compel the monopoly to lower its price, and interestingly enough, also to increase its output. So now we're taking a look at a different way of regulating the monopoly, that is by taxing away its profits. So, for example, in the United States now, there is a controversy over how the federal government should pay for an expansion of its social programs. And one suggestion is that the US could tax profitable monopolies. And the same thing may be true, human capital John. To what extent should the government rely more on corporate taxes than on taxes on individuals like you and I? So let's take a look at how that kind of tax may affect the price and production of the monopoly. And bear in mind that as a post-Soviet country, Kazakhstan has an unusually large degree of monopolies in production. It is not as competitive, perhaps, as some economies in the West, where by competition, I mean we have many firms, many small firms that are competing on price. So let's suppose that the government will tax monopoly at a rate of T per unit of output. So, for example, Baghdad may be running a monopoly that produces limousines in Kazakhstan. The government now will tax her per limousine produced. Okay, so we already know that the monopoly is going to set a price that is at a markup of marginal cost. That markup is shown here in the brackets. The epsilon is the demand elasticity for the monopoly. Now, the government taxes Baghdad per unit of production, but not T, perhaps 50% of the marginal cost. The surprising implication of taxing the monopoly by T is that the monopoly price may rise by more or less than the tax itself, depending on how responsive consumers are to the price of the monopoly. If they care a lot, for example, about the price, if they are very sensitive to the price, then they may actually cut back dramatically on the number of limousines that they are buying from Baghdad. And here is a graph of the monopoly tax. This may be easier to see if we go for 1 minute to the whiteboard. So there is the setup. On the horizontal axis, we will take a look at the number of the machines that is producing a monopoly. Not that many limousine producers in Kazakhstan. And then there is the demand function. As always, we will assume a linear function. And then, as you recall, marginal revenue has, for a linear demand function, has the same vertical intercept as demand and also a slope that is twice as steep as for demand. So there is marginal revenue. And then finally, here is marginal cost. To make the problem a bit easier to analyze, let's assume marginal cost is constant. So there is marginal cost without a tax on the monopoly. So far the problem is straightforward. The monopoly, as always, will pick the level of output where the cost of an additional limousine is just barely covered by the revenue earned for selling that limousine. Or in this case, production of Q1. And then, of course, the monopoly will charge the highest price feasible, which is Q1. That is the highest price that people are willing to pay for Q1 limousines. And there it is. So the upshot of the analysis is this: without the tax of that limousine production, the price in the usual manner. By setting output first and then picking the highest feasible price. Okay, so now let's bring into the story the tax. So marginal cost increases by the tax rate. But the vertical distance between the two marginal cost functions is measuring the tax. Looks like that. Okay, so now how is the monopolist going to set the level of output once you take the tax into account? What happens now? In a way, it's the same old story. The only addition to the story is that the cost of production at the margin has gone up by the amount of the tax. So it looks like that. So the monopolist responds to the tax first by cutting back on production since production costs more than before. And second, by raising the price so that the monopolist is trying to pass on as much of the tax as possible to the consumer. So with the tax in short, the monopolist will cut back on production, but production has become more expensive than before. And people try to pass along to the consumer as much of the tax as it can. But this will depend on how sensitive the machine buyers are to the price. That is, it depends on the elasticity of demand with respect to the price. So in the graph, about the cut back to Q2 and the number of limousines that he is producing. And then we read the new price right up to demand function. The new price is T2. So what do you think? has the price of the monopoly risen by the amount of the tax. In other words, in this case, can Baghdad pass on to consumers of the entire tax. But let's see, here is a measure of the tax itself, the vertical distance between the two cost functions at the margin. And then here is the increase in the price of the benzene. So from the graph, it appears as if the price is rising by less than the tax. So Baghdad, the owner of her monopoly, must absorb part of the tax rather than passing on to consumers the entire thing. And Baghdad must do this because buyers of limousines are very sensitive to the price. So the main point in this hypothetical case study is that we should raise the marginal cost of production by the amount of the tax if it is a per unit tax. Okay, so far. So note that the new solution that the tax is Q2 and T2. What's it so far? Okay, good. And there is the analysis that we just completed. You can always find the PowerPoint slides on the middle page for the class. I will give you a moment to look at that slide for the explanation behind why the tax has not radically increased the price of the monopoly's output. Okay, uh, just to give you a comparison, here is an example of how a tax may affect a competitive firm, not the monopoly, but instead a very small firm, but must take as given the price that is set by the market. So in this case, Ardonna is producing hot dogs, very competitive in a market, as you know. She is one of many hot dog producers in the market. Overall, for the entire industry, demand is downward sloping. And without the tax, we are producing in the competitive industry at output 2.0. But the marginal cost is equal to the marginal value in terms of the price that consumers are willing to pay. So the price nowadays is PO. Okay, now we tax hot dog producers at the T. So marginal cost for any level of production is rising by the amount T, in this case right here. The orange vertical line represents the tax T. So for the competitive industry, marginal cost has risen to all possible levels of production. Now, Ardonna, but other hot dog makers must raise the price in response to the tax. However, when they raise the price, the landed property will go down. In this case, from 2.0 to 2.1, because people refuse to pay such a high pressure hot dogs and therefore are buying more hamburgers instead. The new price now paid by the consumer is P1. So notice that the price has gone up for the competitive firm by less than the tax. P1 minus PO is the actual increase in the price. But the tax amount is larger than that. The tax is P1 subtracting P2. Here is the tax, and Here is the amount of increase in the price that the consumer is paying. That is, the firm has got to absorb part of the tax. In this case, the price that the industry producers can receive is T2 lower than PPO. The industry producers themselves have got to pay part of the tax. That's the problem in this case. The problem, at least for producers. So let's look carefully at that problem. There is market demand for all hot dog producers in this competitive market. And there is the original marginal cost without the tax. Now, you add the tax, which is a constant on each additional unit of production. Or MC plus the tax rate T. Without the tax, the competitive industry is producing up to the point that the price that it is receiving for another hot dog is barely high enough to cover the cost of marginal production. So call that Q1 for Q0. And there is the initial price, CO. Okay, now we have introduced the tax. So our firms have to put back on production because they can no longer sell at such a low price. The overall price has risen due to the tax. So that T1 that the price that is set by the market after the tax is levied. And then I'm going to explain in just a minute of T2. So the price to consumers has risen from T0 to T1. That distance right there. But the church just paid the tax T. So the receipt has gone down from the initial price TO down to T2. And as you can see, uh, the distance suggests that hospital producers like Ardana have got to absorb part of the tax. In this case, it looks like Ardana is absorbing about 1/3 of the tax. And therefore consumers pay the other 2/3 of the tax. Because they are not very sensitive to the price, they shrug their shoulders and pay most of the tax in this case. The more sensitive that they are to the price the flatter the demand function. Because the slope represents the change in quantity that is due to a rise in the price. The flatter the slope, but the bigger the price impact on demand. So to understand this, you call that the slope of the inverse demand function. Is the change in price relative to the change in quantity. Now, you can partly gauge the sensitivity of consumers to price by inverting the slope of the demand function. That is, sensitivity is great if the change in quantity relative to price is very large. If this is the inverse of the slope of the demand function. So the greater the price sensitivity, the more sensitive the buyers are to price. The larger in magnitude or absolute value is the two represent the price, of, which means that the inverse is very small. And so the change in price relative to quantity is the slope of the demand function. The function is factor that people are more sensitive to the price. So the main point is this, that the further the slope, the more sensitive that buyers are, the price. And more difficult it will be for sellers to pass on the tax to buyers. So even competitive firms face the same problem as the monopolists. The amount of the tax that they can pass on depends on elasticity of demand with respect to price. May not be able to pass on much of the tax. Okay, any questions about the impact of the tax on output and price? Okay, good. Thank you. Okay, so here now is a question to you. I will give you a moment to read the slide. We have a vaccine, let's say, on the coronavirus or perhaps measles in Pakistan. And people are not sensitive at all to the price. They are willing to pay any price at all to get the vaccine. So the question now is to you for 2 points of extra credit. Who actually pays the tax in this case? Is it the manufacturer or is it the consumer? And how can you show that outcome in a graph of the market? So,
Professor,
go ahead, yes.
I think that consumers pay the tax because if the elasticity of demand for vaccine is zero, then it will be there will not be a burden. Like this line will not be for producers, so it will only take consumer surplus the tax.
Okay, good. Yes, I agree that if consumers do not demonstrate sensitivity to the tax, they will wind up eating the entire tax. So the drug industry is producing doses of the tax. Okay, and then a question for you. If we have a zero elasticity, for the tax, what will the market demand function look like in this case? So we already know that if consumers are very sensitive to the price, the demand function will be flat. So what does the demand function look like when consumers are not sensitive at all to the price? What is the slope now? For 1 point of extra credit. Well, let's see, the reverse of a flat function is a vertical line. Looks like that. So regardless of the price, people are willing to pay it to get the drug. There is market demand. All right, so there is marginal cost for a competitive market. And now the government will levy the tax to the level right there. Question, what is the change in substitute demanded? No change, right? It's still a 2-1. So here is the tax, the vertical distance between the marginal cost functions is measuring the tax. And as you say, in this case, the price has risen. the entire amount of the tax. So the tax has no impact on output because the firms are able to pass on the entire tax to consumers. So you can see why activists are concerned about the power of drug manufacturers to pass on any increase in costs to consumers. That is, the really about the unfairness of, of low-income consumers have been depicted by the tax. The owners of the drug company won't pay any of the tax in the final analysis of that is yes, the manufacturer will turn will take the tax and pay it in the first instance to the government, but it is the consumer who is financing that event. They just the manufacturers just collect the tax from consumers and send it over to the government. They don't have to pay the tax. Okay, so far. So the main point of our case studies today is that the extent to which consumers pay taxes depends on how sensitive they are to the price. By sensitivity, I mean, do they cut back on the amount that they are buying because of higher prices? Any questions about the passing on of the tax to consumers? Okay, good. So let's go on to talk about the third problem on the sample quiz. This is a very challenging problem, and I'm not requiring you to solve it. However, if you do solve it, I will give you an extra 10 points of extra credit. In this problem, we have a very simple two-man function, 10 minus q, but multiple calls look better and useful because it is falling as quantity or output rises. So let's take a look at the problem, especially since it describes in general the marketing problem that monopolies face on the internet. Demand is price equal to 10 minus q. And then multiple pulse in this case is 7 minus q divided by 2. So let's suppose that Ardana has a monopoly on strawberry juice in a market. Or that's just a web page. She gathers information about what's happening in Kazakhstan. So we can measure often maybe as a number of page hits for Ardana's newspaper. And you remember that the problem in this case is that average cost is higher than marginal cost. So that is the average cost. It's falling because marginal cost is even lower and there's driving down average cost. a business marginal cost. But the problem for Ardana is that she has to cover average cost and price to make any money. However, it would be more efficient from society's point of view if she prices at marginal cost instead. So how much would a dollar cut the price to get to how much did you produce in order to break even? And how much from society's point of view should you produce? Well, let's see. Uh, she has to cover average cost. So if she is just breaking even, then price equals average cost. And she's producing a true one-page hits by advertising her product. And there is the subscription price that people charge. From society's point of view, however, she should produce up to the point of that marginal value to readers is as high as the cost of providing the visible page. Then there is the optimal subscription fee. So what we need to do, we need to find out how much a dollar must produce to break even. So that is 2-1. And how much should you produce? To maximize the social value of the newspaper. and that is Q2 at the lower subscription fee of P2. Okay, so let's take a look. At the break-even point, I found that if producing 2 1-pay tips, that point right there, the price, the subscription fee is equal to average cost. And because the average cost is just total cost divided by output. There is a formula. But we don't have total cost given to us. But we do have marginal cost, which is a derivative in calculus of total cost. So let's model total cost and then divide it by output to get average cost. So remember of the product rule in calculus? Really, I think it's the product rule. So suppose that we have a function g, which is equal to a of parameter times q to the power k. Then of the derivative is the change in g relative to q. Then that is k times a times q to the power of k minus 1. Okay, in this case, g corresponds to marginal cost. So to get the antiderivative, all that we need to do is to estimate k and a. of multiple false is triple false. So this turns the interval to the nth derivative. So here is multiple false. 7 minus 2 over 2. So of course, if multiple false equals 7, then the nth derivative is just 7 cubed. That part of the problem is no problem. So what about 2 over 2? What can define that nth derivative? Well, let's see. This g equals 2 over 2. But the second term in multiple false. What is the nth derivative in this case? Well, let's see. Call it g. The g by the power rule the derivative of fruitful cost is k times a times q to the power of 2 minus 1, k minus 1. Our derivative is q over 2 in this case. So k minus 1 is equal to 1 in this case. That is, in the derivative, you take 2 up to the power of 1. So solving for k, we have a k is equal to 2. So K times A, you change is 1/2. But there is a parameter to choose. The K you already know is equal to 2. Thus, in KA, this is for 1/2. We set K equal to 2, or 2A, this is 1/2. And therefore, A is equal to 1/4. So there is a derivative marginal cost, and the interest derivative is total cost equal to 7/2 for the Torah rule minus 2 divided by 4. It's a 2/3. But so a question for you before we stop and going over time. What is average cost? Well, it is just total cost divided by 2. And that's really easy to solve given this total cost function. It's equal to 7 minus 2 over 4. Okay, so now for F to credit, first solving for output at the point where trace is equal to average cost. Remembering our interest in that function over here. So I will let you try that for an extra credit project due by Wednesday afternoon at 2:30. well, unfortunately, it is a challenging problem.